They called him the Beast of Thornwood, not because he was cruel, but because he had survived what should have killed any man. His name was Elias, and by 1842, he had been on the Thornwood Plantation in Georgia for 15 years. He was 28 years old, and his back was a map of scars. His wrists carried the marks of iron cuffs. His left eye had a faint haze over it from a blow that should have blinded him completely. He stood 6 feet and 5 inches tall, 240 pounds of muscle, sinew, and silence. He had not spoken a full sentence in 7 years, not since his younger sister, Miriam, had been sold away to a plantation in Mississippi. Elias had begged. He had screamed. He had thrown himself at the feet of Master Charles Thornwood and pleaded like a child. "Please, Master. She's all I got. Please don't send her away." Master Charles had smiled, a thin, cold smile, and said, "You want to keep her? Then be useful. Stop scaring my other slaves. Stop looking at me like you want to kill me." Elias had tried. He had tried to smile, to bow lower, to disappear inside himself. But it didn't matter. Miriam was sold anyway. And after that, Elias stopped speaking. He worked. That was all. From sunrise to sunset, he worked the fields, the barns, the heavy lifting that broke other men. He never complained, never asked for anything, never looked anyone in the eye. The other enslaved people feared him not because he was violent, but because he was empty, like a dead man still walking. The white overseers called him the Beast. They said he was part animal. They said he could lift a wagon by himself. They told stories about him to frighten new slaves. Don't go near Elias. He's not right in the head. He killed a man once. That last part wasn't true. Elias had never killed anyone, but he had broken an overseer's arm when that man tried to assault a young girl in the quarters. For that, Elias had been whipped 200 lashes. He survived. The overseer never came back, and the legend of the Beast grew. By 1842, Master Charles Thornwood was in trouble. His tobacco crops had failed 3 years in a row. He owed money to banks in Savannah. His wife, Margaret, was ill with consumption, and his only daughter, Caroline, had been sent to live with relatives in Charleston. The plantation was crumbling. The slaves were restless, and Master Charles had started drinking heavily. It was in this state of desperation that he had an idea. A cruel, bored, drunken idea. Delphine arrived on a Tuesday in late October. She was 20 years old, small, barely 5 feet, with dark skin, quick hands, and eyes that had learned to watch everything without moving. She had been purchased from a plantation in South Carolina, where she had worked as a seamstress and house servant. Her former master had died, and his heirs were selling off excess property. Delphine had been separated from her mother when she was 12. Her father had been sold before she was born. She had no husband, no children, no one. She had survived by being useful, quiet, and invisible. When she stepped off the wagon at Thornwood, she immediately noticed 3 things. The air smelled of dying tobacco, the main house was crumbling, and every single slave she passed looked at her with something between pity and warning. She was taken to the mistress's room, where a thin, coughing white woman named Margaret Thornwood examined her like a piece of furniture. "Can you sew?" "Yes, "Can you read?" "No, A lie. Delphine could read a little, enough to understand numbers and simple words, but admitting that could get her tongue cut out or her hand broken. "Good. Reading makes slaves useless. You'll mend clothes, tend to me, and stay out of Master Charles's way. Understood?" "Yes, For 2 weeks, Delphine did exactly that. She kept her head down. She learned the rhythms of the house. She listened more than she spoke, and she heard the whispers about the Beast. "Don't go to the lower field after dark. He broke a man's ribs last winter. Master Charles is afraid of him. That's why he keeps him away from the house." Delphine didn't know what to believe. She had learned long ago that fear made people tell stories. But she was curious, and curiosity, she also knew, could get a slave killed. Then, on a cool November evening, Master Charles came home drunk. He stumbled into the kitchen where Delphine was hemming one of the mistress's dresses. His eyes were glassy, his smile uneven. "So," he slurred, "you're the new girl. Skinny little thing. You scared of the Beast?" Delphine kept her eyes on her needle. "I don't know no Beast, Master. He's in the lower field. Big as a house. Never talks. I bet he'd eat you alive." Charles laughed at his own joke. Then his face shifted. You know what? I'm feeling generous tonight. Delphine's stomach turned cold. I'm gonna give you to Elias. As a gift. See what happens. He laughed again. Maybe he'll finally say something. Or maybe he'll. Charles. The mistress's voice came from the doorway. Weak. Warning. Don't be a fool. I'm not being a fool. I'm being curious. Besides, she's no use to me. She's too small for the fields. You don't need another seamstress. Let's see what the beast does with a woman. Delphine's hands trembled, but she did not drop her needle. Master Charles called for 2 field hands. Take her to Elias's shack. Leave her there. Tell him she's his now. The 2 men looked at each other. One of them, a middle-aged man named Jeremiah, whispered to Delphine, I'm sorry, child. And then they led her into the darkness. Elias's shack was separate from the other slave quarters, at the edge of the lower field, near the swamp. It was small, made of rough wood, with a single room, a date floor, and a pallet of straw in the corner. A fire pit outside. No windows, just a door that didn't close all the way. When Delphine arrived, Elias was sitting on a stump outside, sharpening a blade. He didn't look up when he heard footsteps. He didn't move at all until Jeremiah spoke. Elias, Master Charles says she's yours. She's to stay here tonight. Nothing, just the sound of stone on metal. Jeremiah set down a bundle of rags and a piece of cornbread. That's all she's got. Then he and the other man left quickly, as if the darkness itself might grab them. Delphine stood alone in front of the shack. She could see Elias in the moonlight now. He was enormous. His shoulders were wide as an ox yoke. His arms were thick with old scars and new calluses. His face was hidden in shadow, but she could see the gleam of his eyes, watching her but not moving. For a long time, neither spoke. Then Delphine did something that surprised even herself. She sat down on the ground, about 10 feet away from him, and placed the bundle of rags in her lap. I'm Delphine, she said quietly. I'm not gonna hurt you. Silence. The blade kept scraping against the stone. I know you don't talk much. That's all right. I don't either, usually. She pulled her knees to her chest. I had a sister once. She was sold when I was 14. I never saw her again. The scraping stopped. Delphine didn't look at him. She looked at the stars instead. I think she's dead now, but I don't know for sure. That's the worst part. Not knowing. A long pause. Then a voice, rough, unused, barely a whisper. What was her name? Delphine's heart jumped. She kept her voice steady. Lydia. She was 9 when they took her. Elias set down the blade. He turned his head slightly, just enough for her to see the outline of his jaw, the shape of his lips. My sister was Miriam. She was 12. I'm sorry, Delphine said. It started to rain. That first night, they stayed outside in the rain. Neither of them moved toward the shack. Neither of them spoke again. But when the cold became too much, Elias stood up, walked to the door, and held it open. He didn't look at her. He just waited. Delphine got up and went inside. The shack was small, but it was dry. Elias gave her the pallet and sat against the wall with his back to her. She lay down, shivering, and listened to the rain pound the roof. Somewhere in the night, she fell asleep. When she woke, he was gone. But there was a piece of cornbread on the pallet beside her. His share, not hers. That was the beginning. Over the next several weeks, Delphine returned to Elias's shack every night. Master Charles didn't stop her. In fact, he seemed amused by his own experiment. He would ask her, "Did the beast talk yet? Did he touch you?" And she would say, "No, master," which was true. Elias hadn't touched her. Not once. But he had started to talk. Not much. A few words here and there. Short sentences. But Delphine listened. She learned that he had been born in Virginia, that his mother had been sold when he was 5, that his father had died trying to escape, that Miriam had been his only family, and that losing her had broken something inside him that he didn't know how to fix. I stopped talking because there was nothing left to say, he told her one night. Words don't stop chains. Delphine looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time. The moonlight through the cracks in the wall lit his face. He was not ugly. He was not a monster. He was a man who had been hurt so deeply that he had forgotten how to be human. Words didn't stop my sister from being sold either, Delphine said. But they kept me alive. I talk to myself sometimes. Remind myself who I am. You're Elias. You're not a beast. You're a brother, a son, a man who survived. He stared at her for a long moment. Then, softly, you talk too much. She smiled. It was the first time she had smiled in years. And something shifted inside Elias. Something he thought had died with Miriam. By December, Delphine had started bringing Elias small things, a piece of bread, a clean rag, a smooth stone she found by the creek. He started bringing her things too, a feather, a piece of colored glass, a flower he had picked from the edge of the woods. The other slaves noticed. They whispered. Some warned Delphine, "Don't get close to him. He's cursed." Others watched with something like hope. If the beast could love, maybe they could too. One night, Elias asked her a question that changed everything. "Do you ever think about running?" Delphine froze. That was a dangerous question. Asking it could get both of them whipped. Answering it could get them killed. But she answered honestly. "Every day." Elias nodded slowly. "Me too. I used to think about it alone. Now I think about it with you." Delphine's throat tightened. "Elias, I'm not asking you to do anything," he said quickly. "I just wanted you to know. You're the first thing I've wanted in 7 years. The first thing that made me think maybe I'm not dead yet." She reached out and took his hand. His fingers were rough, scarred, enormous. But he held her hand like it was made of glass. "We'll find a way," she whispered. "Together or not at all." That night, they made a silent vow. Not to escape, not yet, but to survive. Together. For 4 months, their secret continued. By day, Delphine worked in the house. By night, she went to Elias. They talked. They planned. They dreamed of a place where they could walk without chains, speak without fear, love without hiding. But secrets have a way of surfacing. It was a house servant named Ruth who told. Not out of cruelty, out of fear. The mistress had overheard Ruth whispering about Delphine and Elias. When pressed, Ruth broke. She told everything. Master Charles was not amused anymore. He waited until sunset. Then he gathered every slave on the plantation in the yard. He had Elias dragged from his shack and forced to his knees in the date. He had Delphine brought from the kitchen. "So," Charles said, pacing in front of them, "the beast has a heart after all. I didn't think it was possible." Elias said nothing. He kept his eyes on the ground. "You know the rules," Charles continued. "No fraternizing without permission. No secrets. No lies. And you," he pointed at Delphine, "you were supposed to be a gift. Not a wife." Delphine lifted her chin. "I never asked to be a gift." Charles's face reddened. "You dare speak back to me?" "She didn't do nothing wrong." Elias's voice cut through the air. Low, steady, terrifying. "She followed your orders. She stayed with me. Everything else is my fault." Charles laughed. "Oh, the beast speaks. And what a noble beast he is." He stepped closer to Elias. "You think this is love? You think I care? I own you. Both of you. You don't get to love. You don't get to choose. You get to work and die." Elias looked up. For the first time in 7 years, he looked a white man directly in the eye. "You can kill me," he said quietly, "but you can't make me stop loving her." The yard went silent. Charles's hand went to his whip. Delphine moved before she could think. She threw herself in front of Elias, her small body between him and the master. "You want to hurt him," she said, her voice shaking but clear. "Then you'll have to kill me first." Charles didn't kill them that night. He was too drunk, too shocked, too aware that killing 2 slaves in front of the whole plantation might cause a rebellion. Instead, he had Elias chained in the barn and locked Delphine in the smoke case. But the other slaves had seen something that night. They had seen Elias speak. They had seen Delphine protect him. And they had seen the master hesitate. Jeremiah came to the smoke case after midnight. He slipped a key through a crack in the wall. "Go," he whispered. "Get him. Run north. Don't look back." Delphine didn't hesitate. She ran to the barn. The chains on Elias were heavy, but she found a file hidden in the hay, left there by someone, she never knew who. She filed through the lock as Elias watched her, tears streaming down his face. "You should go without me," he said. "Shut up," she said. We go together. It took an hour. Her hands bled. But the lock broke. They ran. Through the fields, into the woods, toward the river. They could hear dogs in the distance. Lanterns. Shouts. But they didn't stop. They reached the river as dawn broke. The water was cold, dark, fast. On the other side was a settlement of free black families who had promised to help runaways. Elias looked at Delphine. If we cross, we might drown. She took his hand. Then we drowned together. They crossed. They made it. Elias and Delphine reached Ohio 3 weeks later. Cold, hungry, exhausted, but alive. They were married in a small church in Cincinnati by a preacher who didn't ask questions. They had 3 children. Elias became a blacksmith. Delphine became a seamstress. They never forgot Thornwood, but they stopped being afraid of it. Master Charles died in 1855, alone, bankrupt, and forgotten. The plantation was sold. The slaves were freed. But Elias and Delphine had been free long before that. They had freed each other. Years later, their oldest daughter asked her father, "Papa, why did you stop talking for so long?" Elias looked at his wife, his small, fierce, beautiful wife, and smiled. "Because I was waiting for someone worth talking to."